Good evening. This is Talking Devils, the leading independent Manchester United podcast. This is the United Way podcast where we talk about the tactics of Manchester United in the previous game and preview the next game. However, because we're a week out, we won't be previewing Liverpool today. We'll be talking exclusively about the Sunderland game and not really a lot to talk about. So we'll try and fit in as much as we can. No retro game tonight from the lads. Retro. It's been a week since we played in Tony's kit, and I'm presuming, Mike, that's an original jacket, but I don't think so today.
It's a recent re-release, an Adidas re-release.
Yeah, both of you letting the side down today, but
I went full commercial. I actually do have an old, the old Cantona version of this, but it's shall we say a few sizes hence.
A few sizes. I love it. How are you doing anyway, guys? Tony, how are you doing?
All good, mate. All good. It was nice to be at Old Trafford again on Saturday. I've been pretty prolific this season. Gone to 3 out of the 4 home games. I'm not normally at as many games, but the opportunity's been there for everyone, for me to go to all these games. So it's been good. Saturday was a good one. Good start. Nice, comfortable start.
Yeah, it was.
Nice
Mike, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I was meant to be at the game, but I double booked myself, unfortunately, so I couldn't go. But my lads went. My lads both went, and in fact, my youngest has been to 2 of the games this season, and they've won both games. So I'm trying to send him to every single game we're playing this season.
Yeah, I've been to all but Saturday's, reasons I'll come on to in a second. But for 2 of the games, Burnley and Chelsea, I was sat next to Dave. Obviously does the Monday morning podcast with me and Paul, and he's been my best mate for many years, and we've only been to 3 games together, these 2 this season and Brentford a couple of seasons ago. I mean, we've been to loads of games together, but the only 3 where we've actually sat together, and the Brentford game where McTominay scored twice in the last minute. So we've actually got a 100% record when we're sat next to each other. Unfortunately for both of us, because we hate the sight of each other after around an hour. It means we have to tolerate each other for 2 hours for the greater good if we want United to win. Yeah, I wasn't able to go on Saturday, unfortunately, because I had some news, and I don't know, people have seen it on social, so I'm just going to talk about it now very briefly before I talk about the football, because I just want to say thank you to everyone who has been very kind to pass on the condolences and best wishes. My dad died yesterday, and anyone who's been through that, loss of a parent, or loss of anyone really, it's not restricted to that, but it's very difficult, and it was a difficult time, very complicated, dealing with any sort of grief, and it's just really tough. And I posted about it because I did miss Saturday's game, so I did write something up. I was able to watch the game, and I did write something up for the website. We didn't do the podcast on Monday, and I wasn't able to make something work because I was visiting Sheffield, where my dad was in a palliative care unit. So I wasn't able to really say when the podcast was coming. And Paul and Dave, to be fair, they were really patient with me, showed a lot of care. We just weren't able to make it work this week, but we're back on next week. Very disappointed as well because Paul Parker's his book is out this week. And I was just wanting to talk about that and give it a big plug, but it's just not been possible because of everything that's happened. So, first of all, appreciate everyone for the patience with the lack of the pods. And second of all, just thank you so much for everyone reaching out publicly, privately, sending you kind messages. I mean, really, really overwhelmed by how generous everyone's been. And, I've talked this year about how horrendous in certain cases 2025 has been for me. I've lost a lot of people. Paddy Barkley at the start of the year. My mum's had cancer as well, and she's hopefully on the mend with that. But it's just been such a rough year, and yesterday was the roughest day yet. And thank you everyone. Thank you, and these guys as well reached out to me as well. Good tight knit pod. We've got Keane as well, and the other lads on tomorrow's pod. They all reached out and just. Really, really, really appreciate it. All right, nice to have a win to talk about, at least. Manchester United 2, Sunderland 0. And one thing I hate doing on this podcast is I always try and do it neutralising. So if we lose, try and talk about what we did well and try and strike a balance, unless we lose horrendously, which we've tended to do quite a bit. or when we win, try and say like, well, what could we improve upon? And it's difficult because everyone will look at Saturday's game and say, well, we started so well and we had so many chances, and the goalkeeper was forced into a few saves. One in particular from Bruno Fernandes. The two from range from Amad and Bumo, but the one from Fernandes was outstanding. 2 good goals. Well worked for the second goal in particular. I thought Dallo with the throw, we've given him a lot of stick on the pod, but decent long throw, and it fell at the feet of Šeško to make it 2-0. The first goal was really nice, good flowing football, and Mount with a clever first touch and finish. And, Mount with that kind of cult heroes kind of game, which, the club are bigging up a little bit, like Xerxes and Maguire in the past. Sometimes you look at it and say, well, Mount's a favourite of the manager. It's difficult to always see what he does well or what he brings, but he did all right. Whether or not we look at this and say it's good enough to justify the exclusion of
Cunha?
No, yeah. Well, Cunha as well, but he was on the bench, wasn't he? But I understand that one, but we'll talk about Mainu as well, like we always do. United won 2-0. One thing that did disappoint me a little bit, Tony, I'll come to you first on this one, was the manager, Sunderland manager, Regis Labrie, made changes in the first half. He immediately, when he saw how open Sunderland were, he addressed it after about 35 minutes or something. They closed up shop and they were really good for the rest of the game. And I'm not, United had chances to score more goals, don't get me wrong, but it was an even game after that. And when I think about this system under Amorim and when it's impressed me most, it's generally been against teams who've played the same system against us, or they've been open and not really tried to exploit us. You know what I mean? They've not been active in sort of exploiting our weaknesses, and I think Sunderland were at fault for that. Maybe they were a bit lazy with the way that they prepared, and they thought, well, United have been so poor that we don't really have to prepare as much. But that system works. Like, was it Steaua Bucharest last season, or was it Steaua, or the team who, Mike, you're the more continental savvy, whatever Steaua's new name is, Steaua Bucharest. So when we played them in the Europa League, they played the 3-4-3, and we were very, very comfortable against them. I know that Sunderland didn't play that way, but they were open for too long, and then when they made the changes, they were much more compact and had a little bit of joy. And if they had a little bit more luck, they might have made it a bit of a closer game. Tony, what do you think? We've panned the manager for long enough about his tactics. You can't really complain too much when he gets it right, but there was a little bit of a warning sign there, right, on Saturday to say, like, well, they adapted more than what we normally adapt.
Yeah, it's all the old ground for us to start talking about his lack of adaptability in games. But you saw that Sunderland came and done what we have spoken about you would do against this Man United team. You try and play against the back three. It didn't work for them. So I think it was about 35 minutes in, they took one of the number 10s off and brought the big, tall, blonde centre-back on. At which point we were already ahead. So it looked a wee bit like steadying the ship a wee bit when you're sitting in the stadium watching it. But FCSB is Stoy Bucharest, new name's just jumped into my head. FCSB. Yeah, he changed it, and then we didn't really have any answers for that. And again, you're thinking, this is the time. They've went to a back three. Can you go and stick 2 more central attacking players up against their 2 wider centre backs and play into a Mount or into a Fernandes and try and get that middle centre back to jump so that you can play around them? But we didn't really do that. We just kept on plan A. And I tell you what, there was a wobble on 48 minutes when they got given the penalty. I'm thinking to myself, we've had the chance again here to be 3-4 goals up, and we're not going to be. And we got I know it was never a penalty, but at the point when he gave it, and you're in the stadium and you don't know what's happening, you can't see the replays. I was just thinking, this is typical. They're going to get in 2-1, and this is going to be nervy in the second half. So, just another example of perhaps small tweaks. When we talk about big adaptations and big divergences away from his shape and the way he wants to play, just slight tweaks in the positions that you want players to pick up because for the first 30 minutes, Wade, I thought we were very, very good.
Yeah. What do you make of it, Mike?
I'll tell you what I did like, and it seems to be a trait in the league this year. There's far more long balls, but not long balls in the traditional Wimbledon sense. Long passes, and for us on Saturday, what we saw was balls being played into Šeško, but playing to his strengths, not just lumping a ball forward. And I just love the way he, there was a few times where the ball was popped straight into his feet, quite hard. And, he almost Hughes-esque in the way he was receiving, turning, and then playing it wide. And then the game progressed. We kept possession. And I thought just those few moments, it showed why Šeško was an upgrade, or is an upgrade on what Højlund, on what how we tried to use Højlund. Obviously, we've seen Højlund now play for Napoli, where he's been played as a striker where there's a through ball rather than a ball into him. And if we are going to play for the ball into a striker, Šeško seems to be a player who can do that. And I thought that was really, really good. I thought Mount was really, really good, especially out of possession. But in possession, what I particularly liked was Mount seemed to be a player who was the extra one. So if the ball was played out to Mbeumo, he was there to be an extra player to bounce the ball off or to link up. The ball was played out to Šeško, he was there as well. Or he just seemed to be an extra player, and it just it compacted that area of the pitch where the ball was, whether it's in midfield or in the final third. So I agree with Tony. In those moments, in those first 35, 40 minutes, we're very good.
Yeah, but like I say, that first part was noticeable for the fact that it did look like we were outnumbering them in certain areas. But as soon as they addressed that, it was a very level playing field, and I think that's my gripe, is that when you get that situation, like Tony was saying, you've got the opportunity to be brave. And I mean, actually, what is bravery? Is bravery at this point making sure that you get the result on the clean sheet because there's so much pressure on him? We'll talk about the level of pressure with the team selection in a little while, but that for me is one thing. I mean, the game's there for the taking. They've got to come out and attack to try and get a result, and the Premier League is quite good like that at the minute, where teams do come at you, so it's going to make it a more open game. But like the Chelsea game last time, it just stuck. It stuck too long, and at that point, Sunderland were a bit more encouraged. All right, I don't think they were ever any kind of threat of getting back into the game, but United were equally never like the Chelsea game. They were never in any danger of adding a lot more goals to this when they could have done. And it says a lot that we're looking at this. It's the first clean sheet of the season. It's 2-0, and you go like, oh, it's 2-0. It's 2-0. That's impressive, and it seems like a disappointing thing to be impressed with. Having said that, Senna Lomans made his debut. Interesting. We talked about this before, Tony, about not just the selection. You sign a player like that who's a young goalkeeper when you put him in. And he came in and he was great. I mean, he did all the basic things that you want to see, difficult conditions as well. So he did really, really well. Showed no problem with his physicality, which is one of the things that's been a concern about him. And again, I don't want to be negative because he was like the one he'd been given man of the match for doing basic things right, which tells you a lot about, like I'm talking about standards earlier, and winning 2-0 against Sunderland and it being seen as something that was impressive. And there were no really big saves in there. There was one good save towards the end of the game, I think, where he sort of made himself big. One save that you would want a goalkeeper to make. I'm not saying they were expected saves. What I mean is, in that situation, you want to see your goalkeeper make himself big and make a good save, and he did that. But to get the man of the match for it, I feel like we're being generous there. The thing that I'm worried about, Tony, is what we talked about last time, is Liverpool are next. So you've given him a good platform, but it really counts for little if something bad happens against Liverpool. I'm not against picking him. I think, all right, he's got to be first choice anyway. But the timing of it has struck me as something that's a little bit odd. You were there. What did you make of? I mean, some things about football, what you see when you're there, and the presence that they have on a pitch. So what? And obviously, I wasn't there. Mike wasn't there this weekend. So what did you make of his presence in the goal?
I was very fortunate in the seat that I managed to get on Saturday. Was right next to the touchline, so I was in a fortunate position where you could actually hear a lot of what the players were saying to each other. And that's the thing that impressed me the most, Wayne, is that you could hear this goalkeeper constantly talking to the players around him, and he actually was given Maguire doesn't step for the last one that you're talking about, and he gives Maguire a bit of stick after it. He had one save in the first half down to his left. They managed to push it away for the post, away around the post, when we'd seen Onana multiple times would save with his hands in front of him, so the ball would go that way or out, whereas this was full stretch to the left, pushed it away for the goal. It's very impressive, but as any of the goalkeeping coaches I've ever worked with will tell you, and I sound like Roy Keane, that's his job. Those are the basics, and we've been so bereft of that for such a long time that I think everybody got a wee bit excited. I've seen a lot of the memes about him like looking around, like, is this all I have to do to be successful here? Well, at the moment, yes, it is. But what I really liked as well, and I think I probably credit the manager a wee bit with this, it was so clearly evident in the stadium on Saturday that he'd been told, you can go long, you can go into strikers' feet, you can go and play beyond, you can try and hit the wide players if you wish. I don't know if that's been it certainly would seem to me that it would have been an instruction for the coach, because it's such a departure for what we've seen Brian Deere do. But the fella that was sat beside me was from Northern Ireland, and he kept going to me, Brian Deere would have tried to play out there. Brian Deere would try to play out there. And it wasn't on to play out. So what you do if there's no one to play out, that's because they've jumped and they've pressed. So the space must be further up the pitch if they've come into your space. So I was really impressed with him. I thought he was good. Like you say though, Wayne, I was saying last week I didn't think he would put him in for Sunderland, because I thought he wouldn't put him in for Liverpool. So he now has probably made a bit of a rod for his own back, because first clean sheet of the season, man of the match on his debut. Does that make him undroppable?
Yeah, well, he does, really.
Well, it should.
Yeah, Mike, he said about the selection, Amorim, he said that it's rotation, which I like Tony's intimated there. I can't see that. I think he's got to be first choice. That what Tony was talking about with the tactical side of it and the instructions that were clearly given, it does strike me as a bit odd, because not odd in the sense that they did it, but more in the sense that these are the qualities that the players have. And we've talked before about how uncomplimentary a lot of the players are on the profiles, and how specific he seems to be with what he wants from the qualities and the roles. So for players of massively different qualities to come in, you know what I mean? You can't ask Casemiro and Agate to do the same thing. Agate is never going to try the kind of passes that Casemiro does. But if you don't want that from your six, why are you allowing Casemiro to do it? You go back to the goalkeeper. Onana was at the start of last season where he said, I'm going to be taking more risks. I'm going to be showing more character last season. And we all saw what happened. And then Bayendia comes in. It was risk factor is a different kind, but very high in the same kind of way. The thing, what we saw with Lomans was very much a case of he's not going to take a risk. And I mean, sometimes like Van der Sar after, the chaos of Howard and Carroll and Bartes and Ricardo and other goalkeepers like that. People went, who's Ricardo? A few of us remember. Andy Gorham, those kind of keepers who came in for a short period of time, and you're like, oh my God, we just want some stability. And then Van der Sar came in. And yes, he was a world-class goalkeeper, but he was also just like unruffled. I'm not saying Lomans is anywhere near that kind of quality. What I'm saying is when you add the chaos, sometimes when something simple comes in and he's just going to be a goalkeeper and he doesn't want the eyes of the world to be on him, he just wants to keep the ball out of the net, it can make a big difference, something as simple as that.
Absolutely. I mean, we've said it and Tony said it as well. We've had a couple of goalkeepers who made the basics look impossible, whereas we've got a goalkeeper now where hopefully it's impossible for him not to make the basics look basic. What I did like about him was that the fact that he's really vocal for a young lad. But and it just seems like he belongs. The high crosses, no problem. The couple of saves, no problem. The commanding of his area, no problem. And are we doing a disservice to Amorim in terms of what you just said there, Wayne? Where he's being allowed. We're not sure what he's doing. We're not sure how he's playing these players. Is he finding out about Lemons? Is he finding out about Šeško as well? We can play it long to this fella. We can knock it on. Can play it to feet. Lemons can do that. I found a goalkeeper, and I expect him to play against Liverpool. So maybe it's of course he sees them every day in training. We don't, but being out on the pitch, in front of the Old Trafford crowd, in a proper fixture is very, very different. And maybe Amorim's learning as well about some of his players. And yes, he's going longer because he can. He's playing Lemons because, do you know what? Because he can. Maybe this was always the fixture he had earmarked because it's on paper an easier game. And the kid did well. I mean, I would have had Mason Mount as my man of the match, but kid walked away with it.
Yeah, it did. I think you're probably right. Probably was Mount, to be fair. Really classy goal. And I feel a bit bad that we're not going to spend a little bit more time on him. But I do want to talk about the team selection. Not so much Kobe. We've given him lots of love and lots of time. And the point still stands, Kobe, if you're listening or watching this. We do love you and still think you should have played now. All three of us will agree with that. But we want to talk about Luke Shaw's selection. Not that so much that he did anything bad, but the sense of a missed opportunity because Aidan Evans been on the fringes for a long time. He's not getting any game time. He impressed when he was in last season. And there's no League Cup. FA Cup's a long way away. There's no Europe this season. And starting to wonder, when is a player like Aidan Evans going to get game time when Lisandro Martinez is so close to being back in action? You would, in a strange kind of way, I would still have Evans second after Martinez comes back. You put him in the team and Evans should be second in command, but Evans should have been playing. And this, to me, where you look at the Kobe factor or the other players that are around the fringes of the squad, you look at a manager, and it's only really Louis van Gaal who I can remember going, sod it, it doesn't really matter if my job's at risk. Although we did have an injury crisis when he brought in the likes of Paddy McNair and Tyler Blackett, who both played in a win at Arsenal. I don't know if people can remember this. Then he brought in, and they played in a back three. They played McNair as the central player in a back three and Tyler Blackett in the left spot when they hadn't played any football at all prior to his arrival. And then later on in his first season, the likes of, Andres Pereira coming in and Donald Love, if people might remember. And
did he play Fosu Mensah as well?
Fosu Mensah came in and he looked like a world beater until his injury. Rashford obviously came in for his debut as well at Borthwick Jackson, who was a player I've bored people with on there in the past because I thought his crossing ability was great. So 6 or 7 players came in that period of time. But when we've had good crops of players ever since then, or even when Fosu Mensah was another player to mention in the future, when managers' jobs were on the line, kids rarely came in. He went, they're not going to be given a proper chance here, and you just wondered if if the pressure was too much for those kids to come in. And now you're looking at it and almost wondering if the opposite is true, because I'm not sure about the veracity of these quotes, but there's some more quotes from Jim Ratcliffe doing the rounds today, where it's saying like, he sees it as a 3-year plan at least for Amorim, so he's got 2 more years. So what? There's no point to play Luke Shaw, really. I don't mean this in a bad way, because I don't think he's been a bad servant, and he's been horribly cursed with injury luck. But he's not the future of United. Aidan Evans is the future. You're only going to improve him by giving him more game time. You're going to give him more confidence. You've had an opportunity to play him in a couple of these games, Burnley at home, Sunderland at home, and he's just not seen the pitch. He's not seen any game time. And it's just a big missed opportunity there. And you look at the other players who were there, that Tony was saying there were rumours before the week that Shea Lacey was going to be in there. There's talk this week that Jim Thwaites is training with the first team, and he's a capable-looking midfielder as well. And you look at the likes of Go, who's gone out, and Who was the other? Toby Collier, who went out, and he played a few games and he's gone out again and he's not going to be there. You just think of the momentum, the opportunity that's there in that team to stake claim for your own place in the team. Especially when there's such transience with these players, you can't expect Agate to be there for the long term. You can't expect Casemiro to be. So there's a space in there. Yeah, we want it to go to Kobe, but there is also chance for these kids to get a chance, and they're just not going to get it because we're still so stacked with senior players who are on a lot of money. And maybe that's the Luke Shaw conundrum here, but I just look at it, I think Evan was great until he was injured last season. You want to keep that momentum going because the longer you keep him out, he'll get more stale. You lose that momentum. Maybe the stars will align and he'll come back in and do really well. But once Martinez is back in there, you feel that momentum's gone again until Martinez breaks down again, as he invariably does. Mike, I'll come to you first on this. Considering that he's not really, there's inside noise and outside noise. The outside noise is like he could still be sacked after a damaging defeat at Anfield, which he could well be. But all the inside noise at the club is they're insisting that it's not even like a normal vote of confidence. It's a really, really stringent, stern. We are backing this manager who's in for the long haul, which I don't mind. Even if I'm not certain over the manager, I like the idea that they're going to give him time to navigate through like a period which we don't normally see, when it's so critical to see that next 6 months, see how it develops, even if it goes badly, knowing that we're not going to win the title, like Tony said. But knowing you've got that leeway, why would you not make those changes, Mike? Why would you not bring in Evan when he's a player he's going to give you much more over the next 5 years if you invest in him than Luke Shaw is?
Yeah, there's lots to unpick there and lots to agree with. I think that the Grimsby defeat was very damaging to this viewpoint, isn't it? Because had we progressed in that trophy, in that competition, there would have been an opportunity to play. Now, he played a couple of youngsters in that game, and look what happened. So is he is a manager. He's told us he loves winning, like all managers, obviously. He loves winning. He hates losing. You're at United. Every loss is a crisis. You're only one game away from another crisis. So there is pressure on him. Luke Shaw hasn't done bad, but 100% agree. He's not the future. But at the moment for Amorim, is he in a situation where he's comfortable enough to be able to play? I'm going to stick with these young players. I'm going to play Euro on the right centre back. I'm going to play Heaven in the left centre back, and we're going to stick this out. Because if he loses 1 game, 2 games, 3 games, and so on, he's going to be under pressure, regardless of what Ratcliffe says in the press. Because he knows that Manchester United cannot sit in 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th position again. Cannot get lower than that. So there's that pressure. However, if what we're hearing from Ratcliffe is indeed the truth, in that you've got 3 years, Ruben, you've got 3 years. You turn this club around. You do what's needed, and we as a club are building for their future by buying all these young players. We bought another midfielder last week, right? Another young midfielder. We're buying all these players for the future, ready to go into this team. It's sort of, I don't know what's going on. It's got to be one or the other. You've either got to go for it or not. And it's almost game by game, rather than a short to medium plan.
Yeah.
And I know that, man, I said game by game. We know they do plan, but it's like what we say with his selections. It's what you're doing. We're not sure, and I don't think he is sure. I don't think he knows. And I keep saying sure as in SURE, but I'm not sure about sure.
Yeah,
it's just your accent, mate. It's hard to understand.
Yeah, I'm getting away with that one as the dull northerner in here.
Can we get some subtitles with Tony's next comment, please?
There's no need for this in fighting. We don't need that. All over you. Tony,
I love how you called yourself a northerner, Wayne. I'm about 300 miles north of you.
Northern where it counts. Scotland counts. I don't mean that.
Wow.
Yeah. So Tony, I mean, the other way of looking at this is, again, harking back to the Bengal era. I remember something Raphael was telling me about the time that they were there and the players who were coming through. The youngsters it's a double-edged sword, because in one frame of the argument, you've got amenable kids who you can mould. You can tell them to go out and play the way that you want to do. For United, historically, the idea is you go out and play. So almost diverse. It's a big dichotomy with the Van Gaal era, that someone who was so authoritarian would go like, the senior players must do things that he wants, but the young players can come in and just play that they want to play. So Rashford that played with this liberation and freedom, and ironically enough, that's what yielded United's better looking football in the end part of that season. Is that he had all this freedom with all these kids because he didn't give them that kind of instruction which he normally would do to the senior players. And you wonder if maybe there's an element of that in this, that, like, because there is that element of the kids are there, and it's like, do I bog them down with the instructions of the plan when the senior players more, they're more theoretically capable of carrying out the instruction, and the job's at higher risk now, so you've got to trust the senior players. Otherwise, you put a kid in, risk them burning out and looking like an idiot if you lose your job because you've trusted your rookies. Where do you fall on that side of the argument?
I think for me, it's not an Amorim problem. It's I think since, and he also had footballing say, shall we call it, over the club. I think we've lost a wee bit of what the club is actually about in terms of bringing young players through and giving young players opportunities and letting us all get excited about young players. I think we'll come on to talking about the academy and certain alarming things that are being said in the press and stuff that people have been talking to me about and stuff that I've picked up. But if you're still playing Luke Shaw and he plays the most minutes out of the three centre-backs because he's the one that seems to get subbed the least, that would tell me that the manager's no planning on moving him out when Martinez comes back, because he wouldn't be the one that's... You're not just going to go from playing every minute to not playing at all. So somebody else is probably going to get bumped. And then that leads back to the point, like, if we win the FA Cup, which is a big if, that's 7 games. So you take your 38 games in the game in the League Cup, that's 46 games. When is Aidan Heaven going to play? Like, if he's not going to play at home against Sunderland, and Luke Shaw, who's been there for 12 years, give or take, is still playing every minute, does the club stand for youth? Is that a missed opportunity to, like, part Kobe Minu? We've all spoke about how we feel about that. There's Aidan Heaven. There's another one getting blocked. There's Obi that's playing for the 21s, could be on the bench. Don't see him. Doesn't play minutes. Granted, we're trying to put Sheshko in and we're trying to get him used to it, and it looks like signs like he is getting used to it. I despair a wee bit, and I don't think with this particular gripe you can lay it at the manager's door. I think it comes from those above them.
Well, let's jump into that then, because you want to talk about Nick Cox departing. Stephen Tope is coming as the new director of the academy, basically taking over from Nick. We had Nick on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. Thanks to Nick for his time up. He's already settling at Everton. Like I told him, don't do too well up there, even though I want him to do well enough. Got a lot of time for Nick. Talked to him numerous times about the club's identity and the academy and everything like that, partly for the book Football Talk by Matt Busby, partly for just general conversations as well, because I like talking football with him. And one of the things that he always stressed to me was that the academy was not necessarily ring-fenced in terms of like completely segregated, because it's not, because there was always that it's attached to the club. It's part of what the club stands for. Of course, it is the heartbeat is the thing that operates when all else is sort of gone. It's the thing that the club always relies on in times of crisis, and it always has and probably always will do, because in the term of the footballing structure at any football club, you've got the academy at the bottom of it, which always will serve as a source of players to come into the side. But the interesting parts, obviously, for the purpose of this podcast, is to do with how stringent it is in terms of the coherent strategy all the way down. Do they look at it being a 3-man defence in the academy? And whenever I talked to Nick about this, his answer was always that no, that wasn't the case. It wasn't the case that they would go down there and mandate that they would play these kind of formations at that level. Even though when Amorim first came in, it was intimated across various sources that it would be a club-wide structure. That's not been the case, and apparently it's not the case that they don't have the responsibility to change to 3 at the back and all that sort of stuff, which is obvious because that's what we've seen in the lineups. However, what Nick did talk about was the same way that Amorim has done, in a way that it's about principles and not system, right? It's about or it's about system, not formation. So system being principles and everything like that. So when Nick's talked about that, it's never been a divergence away from what the club actually traditionally stands for. So it's never been anything that was mandated. It was never anything that was brought in by Ineos or Amorim and said, this is what we do now at the academy level. The academy level's still been its own thing. It's very much part of the same system, but it's still doing the thing that it's supposed to do. Yes, Jason Wilcox is in there. Yes, they're bringing in. They've just changed more staff there today, haven't they? There's been a bit of a turnaround where the guy whose name escapes me now was responsible for bringing in the kids. He's been moved on. They're bringing in someone else. So a lot of restructuring there, as well as there probably will be a little bit more as well, considering the likes of people that Tony Whelan, Nick Cox, big names that have gone in recent times. People who, so many big names there at that level who are associated with maintaining the club's identity as well. So really, when I talked to Nick, I wasn't that concerned about it because people, I was interested about it, but his answers always left me fairly satisfied. However, there's the part of there being the person who's in the job and he's striving to make sure that everything is as stable as positive. So what kind of thing is he going to say? I don't doubt his honesty and integrity in the way that he explained what he was talking about. So there's that case where you go, all right, well, the club's still standing what it's supposed to stand for at that level. But nonetheless, a lot of change, Tony. And like you said, when you look at what's happening at the senior level and you go, not completely filled with confidence here, it is probably right to have a bit of concern, especially when there's, you look at it and say, well, the academy, like I said earlier, the academy at the club is a byword for consistency. The academy at any club is a byword for consistency. When that's in a period of transition, when the senior side's at a period of transition, and you need some kind of coherent link there in order to have confidence that the kids are going to get the right kind of game time, it's probably, when we're talking about the likes of Heaven not getting game time and Obe and Manu even, we can look at the line that goes straight down and go, well, it's probably time to not panic, but maybe squeaky bum time, get a little bit worried about what's happening and hope for a more coherent message. Even though the results on the pitch have been great for the academy so far this season, the structural side of it, you're going, bit of a concern.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you and I have spoken about this offline before. My background is academy football in Scotland, various academies, but the main one's Ayr United, which is the club in my hometown. I've always followed and worked there for 10 years. Worked at St Mirren, Hamilton Accies, various other places. And for me, the academy doesn't need to have the same system all the way through. That's not a byword for success. Ultimately, for me, academies first and foremost are about developing the people, staff and the young players, and shaping them to support the first team when they get old enough. So the teams that are closest to the first team, in my opinion, should play the same way as the first team. So for us, it would be the 21s and the 18s. They should be playing a back three, because when Aidan Heaven is expected to play as a left centre back in a 4, but then jumps up into the first team and is expected to play as a left centre back in a 3, with the wing back disappearing miles up the pitch, and he's got that whole section of the pitch to cover on his own, it's a completely different tactical understanding, positioning, shape, distances, when to step, when to sit. Is it your man? Can you go and cheat a wee bit and be a wee bit closer to the side and do the kind of half and half, left back, left centre back thing? That comes through practice, and you do not want, any football club does not want an 18, 19-year-old player practicing on the first team's pitch on a Saturday. That cannot happen. So for me, the 21s and 18s need to play, or should be playing, the same way as the first team, particularly if you have a coach who is so wedded to that system, because we know that he's not going to bring Aidan Heaven in and play him as a left centre back. He's not going to bump 4 players out of position to fit him in to give him minutes. Aidan Heaven's going to have to come into our first team ready to play in our first team. And I think he is. But he needs the support, and that's what I was saying about the academy. The academy is there to support the arrival of young men or women into their first team environment. And our academy cannot do that if it's not playing the same way. And they can win as many youth FA Cups as they want. They can win UEFA Youth League games. They can appoint as many of the class of 92 or ex-players as they want into these positions. They need to fix that, and it needs to get done properly. Otherwise, you're not going to get the same level of young players coming through. I've got a friend, Gregor, who's on one of my Man United chats, and he was saying to me, I don't agree with this, but he thinks that the record of putting young players in the matchday squad is at risk with Ineos because they don't seem to value it. I don't agree with that. I don't think that's the thing. And in the squad of having 9 subs named in your match day, I don't think that necessarily is as big as an achievement as it used to be. So it's not something that I would pay a lot of attention to, just like I wouldn't pay attention to the 19s winning games or winning trophies. But it is alarming to see reports of the staff turnover, reports of teams turning up without the right kit, teams turning up to games late, people having to take double teams because they don't have enough coaches. I mean, that is stuff to me that's fundamental and alarming, because you can't develop the people with the younger ones to get them to the 18s and 21s and be in a position to support our first team and to progress them into our first team environment. But everybody will tell you, we've just sold Garnacho for 50 million and that's the most we've ever got for an academy player. So everything's rosy in the garden. But for me, Wayne, I am deeply, deeply concerned at how our academy progresses or will continue to progress with Ineos, because it does not seem to be a huge priority for them.
Yeah. Mike, is a great point made about the matchday record as well. I was asked about this earlier in the season somewhere. I've been doing some media, and my reaction to that was, it's not really about the record. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's 80 years old. It's a great, proud record, but records will eventually go. Everyone came at me for that, like saying, well, this one won't. And for Tony's point, I think it's probably right, because you might not play one in the 11, but if you're the manager who somehow can't find a place for one in 9 subs, then you will be open to all kinds of criticism, especially when the third goalkeeper's Tom Eaton at the moment. Bring back another sub goalkeeper. You know what I mean? Another, I don't know, who Radek Vitek can be the third goalkeeper for the next 10 years. And you go that he's the one. Because that's just a way of making that token run go. But the point is to me that does more damage than the other way around, than just breaking the record. Because if you're just keeping it for the sake of it, it's about the intent, isn't it? It's not like, so they could break the record, but then in the next 2 seasons, they show such a aggressive intention to flood the team with kids that, you see the likes of Cobby in there as the star man, and Thwaites beside him in midfield, and Shea Lacey and JJ Gabriel getting time alongside Wayne Rooney up front. If you see 7 or 8 of these players in the side, it doesn't really matter if the record goes this season. That's why Tony's right, is that it's all right that everything is flooded in terms of the players being good there, but probably at the worst possible time we're seeing all this transition with the staff.
Yeah, I mean, I've been fortunate in my job, as you know, I'm a teacher, where I've had some players be at my local club here is Spurs, and I've had lots of time at the academy there. And I just remember one of the lads actually made it pro, and from he was a youngster at Spurs. It was at a time when Pochettino was there, and Pochettino was adamant that the youth teams, so the 18s, the 21s, and I think the 16s as well, played the way that he wanted his first team to play. And it wasn't just about the system. It was, and I remember the academy director at the time, there was John McDermott, who's now at the FA. And a lot of the stuff that they did with these young players, and I'm talking players when they were 12, 13, 14 years old, all the way up to when they became scholars and then pros, is that you're a 24-hour footballer. And I know that's the thing that's mentioned a lot in academies and in clubs. It's a sensible ideal, but it's about standards. You are representing the club, you're representing yourself. So you got to make sure that whenever you're at the club or away from the club, that you are representing in the right way and having those standards. Now, if we're hearing that Man United, our academy, can't get the basics right, how is a player going to get it right? What are they looking at, thinking, well, I've got this coach this week, I've got that coach that week, I ain't got my kit today. If you can't get those basics right, then how is a footballer? And we know at the profession, Tony will know better than any of us here, at the professional level, it's those margins, those small incremental things when added up that matter the most. And if we can't get those right, then we are in trouble, because it's the academy that feeds into the first team, always has, and it does for a lot of clubs. And we just got to, where are the standards? And if those standards are slipping there, where else are they slipping in the first team, amongst the first team, in that changing room? It's so it's a massive, massive worry for me that if we can't get these, and it should be easy at that level. You're working with children, you're working with younger adults who want to make that next step. There's a drive, there's a motivation. So they want to tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it. But if we're not having those standards, as are those basic expectations, what's happening at the first team level?
Yeah. Tony?
I just to follow that point, it's something that's alarmed me for quite a while, is the transition to first team, because for me, Rashford's the best academy product in the last 10 years. I think that would be fairly agreeable to most supporters of the club. But we see attitude problems, we see lifestyle problems, we see professionalism problems. So there you go, right? And then Jadon Sancho comes in, misses training, goes on loan. I know he's came from our academy, but he's a young English player. Garnacho's not at the club. A year ago, it would have been unthinkable for Alejandro Garnacho to be playing for Chelsea. But everything you're led to believe is that professionally, his conduct left a lot to be desired, and it came to the point where he had to be moved on. These aren't the isolated things. This is a pattern of, do we build academy players up to be superstars too early so they can't cope with it? Is the club too big? Is there too much scrutiny? Because you're either a god or a goon at Man United. One week you're a goon, the next week you're a god. Because it does kind of grate on me a wee bit. I was thinking about this because where I was sat was roughly where that picture of Mainu, Højlund and Garnacho was taken. And I was thinking, God, that wasn't even that long ago. No. And two of them are away, and one of them can't get in the team. So what are we doing wrong? People like Nick Cox, huge respect for Nick Cox, and he's been very good with me when he didn't have to be. I reached out to him on Twitter, and he was always back and forward, and I went down to watch the 21s up against Bayern Munich, and he was waving to the wee man and everything. A lot of respect for him. for a guy like that to want to walk away from Manchester United, that tells me there's something not right, because I'm nowhere near his level in terms of the academy stuff. But if I was working at Manchester United, you would need to drag me out. I would have to be dragged out, kicking and screaming. So for me, perhaps the support wasn't there, and somebody's went, come to us. We'll give you the support. We see what you are. Come and work for us. Because I don't think it necessarily, I could be totally wrong, Wayne, and you maybe know more than me, but to lose somebody of the calibre of Nick Cox is alarming. But I would say that you're starting to get a bit of a picture in my mind building of what Ineos are and what they are not. And I don't buy into the 3-year plan thing. I don't think there is a plan. I think the plan was they're going to appoint Amorim. He's going to give us a way of football, a way of playing. It's all going to work. As long as we get rid of these big wages and we cut the staff numbers, we'll get the club profitable. This guy will fix the football side and everything will be rosy. And perhaps the academy has been stuck into the B section of that, or slid down the priority lists. And I think it must be not the main priority, but it has to be at least in the top 2 at this football club.
Yeah, agree with everything you said there. And yeah, Nick already is big loss to the club. He definitely understood what the club stands for, and I think one thing that I've learned as a supporter, I'm sure most of us have learned, is that you meddle with consistency at your peril. If that might be the best way of putting that. You interrupt a groove with occasionally dire consequences, but hopefully United's talent pool at that level is strong enough to withstand the transition. We shall see in the future. Anyway, so that's it for this week. Next week we'll be back, but we'll be back just to preview the Liverpool game, so it'll be a short podcast, although we'll probably have plenty enough to chew at in that one, but just dedicated to previewing a game for once rather than doing hindsight management, which is always the best. We can tell Amorim where we went wrong all the time. Next week we've got an opportunity to get it wrong. I can't wait for that. I'm sure we will. I'm sure we will indeed. Yeah, we'll be back next week, guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate your time. Appreciate Tony and Mike's time as well. And have a great evening and rest of your week.